I'm Kathie Jorgensen. We were very, very early members of Church of the Servant. We had been at St. James, where I was a member and Philip came. And then when we came to this church, it just was right for both of us. And I am here with Joe Cooper, who saw us through wonderful times and troubled waters and helped us celebrate our 40th anniversary, and is now back in Wilmington. We are so delighted that he is, and he knows more about this place than anybody. So tell us about yourself.
Well, I grew up in the Diocese of East Carolina, was in St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Windsor, grew up there and graduated from from high school, went to college in Wilson at Atlantic Christian, which was a Disciples of Christ school. And then I went on to seminary in Alexandria, Virginia, Virginia Episcopal Theological Seminary. And my first charge was in Goldsboro as an assistant at St. Stephen's. And then after a few years, the bishop wanted me to go up to the Northeast where I grew up, Murfreesboro, Gatesville, and Sunbury. I had the three churches. And then I was there for a few years and then moved to Fayetteville. And Fayetteville is where I really began to learn a lot about Church of the Servant. Clem Jordan and I were good friends. We've been to a lot of conferences together. And I always admired the work that he was doing here at Church of the Servant. So when he moved on, my name got put in the list to be considered as the new rector. And I got the call. It was interesting, I had a call to Nag's Head at the same time.
Oh,
and I'd always wanted to go to Nag's Head, but this felt like what God was calling me to be, was to come here. And so I came here in 1982. I was only the second rector and had a wonderful experience with this parish.
This church has a number of artifacts, pieces of art, and implements to assist us in worship that really aren't to be taken for granted, because many of them have been created by members or friends of our parish. And we're going to talk about these today, some of these today, so that we have a good record of them. I know your friend Andy Cobb did a number of copper sculptures for the use in our church. Tell us about those.
Well, to start with, when the church was being built, the new building, we thought about a processional cross, and I had a cross I had bought in, I think it was Sharks Cathedral, of a second or third century cross. And I asked Andy if he could reproduce it in copper. And so we have the processional cross. That was one of the first things he did. And then there was a need for a creche with the nativity scene, and so he ended up doing, I think, 2 or 3 pieces each year, and it is a beautiful copper rendition of the Holy Family, the Jesus, and also all the various characters, the wise men and everything. And that was a wonderful gift from Walt and Margaret Hutchins. Let's see what else he did. I don't know what I'm trying to think of.
Baptismal font?
He did a baptismal font that we used out at the beach, and brought it here to be used some, and it, I don't know whether y'all still have it. It's still around, okay. Well, the Advent wreath is also one of his creations, and it hangs in the middle of the church during the season of Advent, and greenery is put on it, and the 4 candles for the 4 Sundays of Advent.
Joe, please tell us about this painting of the Madonna and Child by Raphael.
The story of the picture with Raphael's picture with the elaborate frame. It was in the diocesan house here when it was the Murchison house, and the diocesan house was moved to Kinston. And when it was moved to Kinston, the picture went with them. And I happened to be up there one day, and we were still in the old building. And I went into the storage room where the tables were stored, and there was that beautiful picture sandwiched between the folding tables. So I asked the bishop, could we borrow it and use it behind the altar for the season of Advent in this old building? He said, fine, take it. So we never returned it. So when we moved to the new building, we hung it up in high, and it's a beautiful copy, obviously, of Raphael's Madonna and Child.
Up high so no one could take it. Unusually, we have a piano that's white. Tell us about that.
That piano was given to us by Vera Harold. When she died, she had it in her will that Church of the Servant would get the piano. Well, we would not have normally had a white piano, but she loved a white piano. It is a Steinway. It's a very nice piano. Our organist at the time, Sam Burke, wanted to paint it black, but we said no, it cost too much to do that. So we have a white piano, which isn't too bad in that space.
When Nell and Matt first saw the white piano, Nell, Miss Classical pianist that she is, put her nose in the air. And Matt went over and sat down and just practically hugged it. And he played it, he started playing, and boy, did he make that. So it's amazing how many people were converted right then to a white piano.
It's beautiful. I can't imagine it being anything else.
I know.
But it really is not bad in that space.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
We did put a black cover.
On top of it.
When I was employed at UNC Wilmington, I got a call from the church to say that the cross was about to be placed on top of the church, and would it be okay? Could I get off work and come over? They wanted people to see it. And they wanted people to see this experience. And so I took a fellow Episcopalian, not a Church of the Servant member, with me, and we came over to watch. Tell us about that cross.
The cross, believe it or not, is 10 to 12 feet tall. It was made by a person here, and I cannot remember his name, but an ironworks person did the work on it. The cross was originally designed by Myrtle Mott and myself. She wanted a cross with a circle on it, and I said, well, why don't we do 2 circles so it looks like the globe. It also can be seen from any angle as a cross with a circle. Of course, it's a symbol of eternal life and wholeness and the world, the way it is now. So that's how that cross came to be.
Oh, it's just beautiful.
Okay, cool.
Joe, tell us about this portrait by Anglin.
Jack Anglin was in Kinston, North Carolina, and we had an acolyte festival there, and we asked Jack to do one of his drawings of Jesus. And he starts off with it turned sideways and does a picture of the world with the continents. And then he turns it and begins to bring in the picture of Jesus. It was quite fascinating, and he gave it to me after that acolyte festival.
Oh.
And so I said it'll be perfect for Church of the Servant.
Oh,
It's a great picture of Jesus,
just
I think.
beautiful.
Go ahead.
Joe, tell us about these beautiful stained glass windows.
These windows came out of a church in Washington, D.C., and I think it was Church of the Epiphany. Rowan LeCompte had done them, but they were changing the theme of what they were doing on it sat between the narthex and the nave of the church. And he gave them to us, and of course this is the Jesus saying, let the children come unto me, and that's the feeding of the 5,000. And they're beautiful, they're very simple, but it's certainly one of Rowan's wonderful works of art, I think.
Absolutely. Joe, tell us about this beautiful bell.
Carol Van Etten gave this bell. Church of the Servant is a wonderful group of people who love to gather and talk. But in order to get the service started, we need to let them know it is time to be quiet and get ready for worship. So this bell helps that to happen.
It's just lovely. Joe, tell us about this beautiful symbol.
It is a gift from the J2A program in 2000. they went to the rim of the Grand Canyon. And if you will notice, it's a labyrinth. And it's also called Man in the Maze.
Wow. Joe, every time somebody tries to open these doors, they do it wrong. So why does that happen?
These doors were designed so that if the church had some sort of activity or service that was more people than could sit inside, these could be opened up and add a whole nother dimension to the seating.
Well, for goodness sake. No. Well, here we are in our new church. Not to be called just the sanctuary, but it was for many years, the new church. So tell us about the furnishings, Joe.
Well, to start off with, the movable platforms were built by Courtney G. Francis Hawk designed them. They were in the old building, and they can be put in 15 or 20 different figurations. And that was one of the first things. The altar was built by Courtney G. Also, these kneelers were his wonderful art and crafts. The Lebanon pulpit, ambo, if you want to call it. And see, that's another part of the platform. We had the chairs put in instead of pews, so the church could be used for everything, for fellowship, as well as worship, and as well for any occasion we might want to have. You kind of think all of it's holy, not just that the fellowship is as important as anything else we do. So that's why this became our multi-purpose space.
These chairs were having their pads put on each leg of the chair the morning that our daughter married at 2 o'clock that afternoon.
Because they made so much noise when you moved.
Oh, yes. So now I noticed that the choir chairs are different.
Well, we got them because we wanted something for the choir to sit in that had a harder surface. And I believe they were on sale from Motel 6.
In almost the very middle of the labyrinth. Tell us about it.
When we built this church, we decided it would be nice to have the dimension of a labyrinth, that people could come at any time and walk as a meditation tool. Jim Sims and Beth Habner did this, and it sandblasted into this concrete floor. The idea of the labyrinth, this is a copy of the one in Chartres Cathedral in France, is you walk it, and as you walk to the middle, you shed things that are distracting you. You get in the middle and you just kind of open yourself to whatever. And then you walk out and think about how you will implement that in your life. It's a wonderful tool for meditation. And especially if you're like me, I can't sit still long enough. So this makes me able to walk and do my meditation.
Lovely. Our organ had an original and now an upgrade. So tell us about the original organ.
The original organ, we had a piano to start with in the old building. And we had Sam Burton come on the scene. And we had a friend, Ann Hines' father, used to deal with organs for the Chants Company. He called us and said there's an organ, self-contained organ, that you can have for $1,000 at Rhodes College in Memphis. And we didn't have that kind of money, but somehow we came up with it. We put on Labor Day weekend, 3 or 4 of us jumped in a U-Haul truck, drove to Memphis, disassembled the organ. It was in a box, but everything was labeled and numbered because that's the way pipe organs are. Put it in a truck and brought it back here. Laid it out in the floor in the new building, the old building, and it took up the whole room. And we had a week to get it together because Sunday we were going to have a service in there. So we kind of put it all together, and then we cut it on, and it worked. It was a miracle. And that is you see the white box, that was the original organ. it had the keyboard right into it. And so that's the original organ, and all this has been added to it to enrich it. So it's a fascinating work of art.
Joe, tell us about this banner.
Every time the church goes to the diocesan convention, back in those days, each church would take their banner. So Church of the Servant didn't have a banner, and so Barbara Hearn created this banner, and it goes to convention every year to represent the Church of the Servant. It's a very creative piece.
Beautiful. Joe, this is called a cartoon. First tell us why, and then tell us about it.
Our wonderful friend, Rowan McCall, who has done a lot of work in the Washington National Cathedral. This was the cartoon, which is the pattern, like a dress pattern, for a mosaic that's made of glass in the basement of the cathedral in the Resurrection Chapel. It is showing the story, the resurrection story of Jesus telling his disciples to try fishing on the other side of the boat. And so that's what they're doing. And if you'll notice, that window up there is a window that's in the cathedral. And Rowan came over here and got a step ladder and painted it blue and put the stars in for us.
I understand this is called a tabernacle. Tell us about the tabernacle.
My friend Chuck Chamberlain, who is one of the heads of the art department at East Carolina, I had seen some Stations of the Cross that he'd done in this kind of medium, and I said, how about doing us a cover for our tabernacle? And so this is a wonderful thing with the fish in the middle and the symbol of holiness and hands kind of going up, and it's where you put the reserved sacrament so you can take it to people who may be sick and in need of a communion. And the candle stays lighted whenever the reserved sacrament is in there.
So tell us about these beautiful candlesticks.
Frances Hawk had a studio down in Wrightsville Beach, and she had wonderful pieces of art in it. And these were in there, and we turned them into torches by turning those upside down. And then these we made into altar candles. And she had beautiful things. I do not know who did them.
Oh, they really
You might leave that back.
Okay, tell us about this beautiful kneeler.
This is a beautiful piece of work. Barbara Gonzalez did it, and it's got the roses around the circle, which again is eternal life, the Greek cross in the middle, and it's used for weddings. So the groom and the bride kneel on that before they say the final prayer.
So Joe, can you tell us about Rowan Comp's window here?
Again, Rowan LeComte was such a great friend of this parish. He went to, this window was in a church somewhere in Maryland, and the church had rebuilt and had a different theme for the windows because there'd been a fire. And this window had gotten crated up and put in a balcony that had no access to it. Well, Rowan called the rector and said, could we have the window? I'd like to give it to Church of the Servant. The rector was getting ready to retire and said, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's a memorial window. So Rowan wouldn't give up there. He called the family that was still living, that it was in memory of, and asked them, and they said, by all means, you can have it.
Oh.
So he got it, and he brought it, gave it to us. It's a healing window that he and his first wife designed. And a woman here in town put the banner around the side with Rowan's instructions. But it's a beautiful window.
So many wonderful symbols.
There's a lobster in that.
There's a lobster, there's a flower, there's a starfish. It's just wonderful.
It really is.
It's just wonderful. This is an unusual building, Joe. Tell us about it.
Well, John Thompson was the architect and met with us on several occasions. And he said since the children loved meeting in tents for Sunday school when this church first began, why not make the church to look like a tent? And so he did, and it's also an equilateral Greek cross, which is symbol, of course, of wholeness and completeness. And if you'll notice, if you look up, all the different angles that come across form crosses. And then the ones on the side form arrows. And it's a beautiful piece of work, I think. Buddy Bryant was his draftsman and did a lot of the design for this.
Oh, it's just gorgeous.
And he was a member of the church. And he was a member of the church.
Yeah.
Joe, here we sit in our rocking chairs, and there are how many? 8?
8, I believe, something like that.
In the sanctuary. So why?
Well, I had gone to a conference with the National Liturgical Commission chairman, and I'd been to a church where they had them and explained why. They said it was for people, nursing mothers, older people who need to kind of move a little bit. And I said, well, why don't we put some in Church of the Servant? And I tell you, they're popular. I think the teenagers like them more than the old folks. But they are nice, and they do say we care about both nursing mothers as well as older people and teenagers.
Yeah. That's,
These
So-
large trees, go ahead.
I know we've been talking about things that have been made for the church, but we also had some magnificent trees that God made for the church. So tell us about those.
There was nothing out here but just grass and dirt. And Tracy McCullum, landscape architect, came by and he said, I'd like to help you. And he came, we were in the middle of Stations of the Cross, and we came out to do this, the crucifix, and he arrived with this huge machine that had a live oak tree in it and came down and put it in place right there. And then he came back and gave us this one. That's why we have big trees out here.
Wow.
And I think he did that one too. Isn't that amazing? And I believe he put in these stones.
Joe, as you can see, our memorial garden has really grown.
Yeah, I think that's good. We decided early on, if we were going to have a memorial garden, rather than build some concrete thing, a marble thing, that we would inter people's ashes into the soil and put a mark up, usually a stone, with their initials or their name on it. And we have several people who are buried here now in the earth, not in plastic bags or things like that.
So please tell us about the crucifix.
John Mark Estep lived in Elizabethton, Tennessee, and he had this crucifix. He was quite a good artist. He had it in his yard coming out of a satellite dish. Somebody told me about it, so we got him to send us some pictures, and John Mott fell in love with it, told the Arts Committee we've got to have it no matter what. So here it is, and it's a beautiful piece. It came to Wilmington in the back of a pickup truck in a snowstorm.
Oh,
We went out to eat, and he parked the truck in the restaurant, and here was Jesus laying in the back of his pickup truck with snow on it. But anyway, isn't it a beautiful piece? Okay.
Joe, as always, we thank you for sharing with us and for enriching us even more by being here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.